Okay, so to make your own sourdough starter from scratch, it's actually really easy and quite satisfying. Mostly because all you need is water and flour and a little bit of patience. So on the first day, I take a clean glass jar. You can use a plastic one too. And I add 100 grams of flour with 100 grams of water. And I stir it until it looks like a paste. I like mine to be a little bit thicker just because it, in my opinion, I feel like it's being fed better. That initial feed from the start, usually I like it to be a little bit thicker. I like the consistency of my sourdough to be thicker regardless, because it's just the way my household works. A thicker paste tends to work better than a more liquidy starter. Once you get that all mixed up really nicely and there's no dry bits, then you want to cover it up loosely. I like to use just a really thin towel on top, and then I use the lids from mason jars without the middle part, and I cover them up and I just let it sit on the counter overnight. The next day, you'll notice a little bit of bubbling if your house is the right temperature. If it's a little bit colder, you won't get as much activity. On the next day, I don't actually discard half the mixture on the first feed of the second day. I just go ahead and feed it again, but that's just how I do stuff. That just seems to work better for me, and I feel like the starter just bubbles more when I skip that first discard on the second day. But you want to do the same thing, 100 grams of water and 100 grams of flour. Mix it together, then cover it loosely just like you did the first day. Now, on the second feed of that second day, you do want to discard about half of the starter, just because you're kind of running out of room at this point. But I like to put it in a container and save that discard in my refrigerator, just because if I had an occasion where fruit flies got into my starter because I didn't close it properly, and they laid eggs, and that can happen because obviously fruit flies love that smell of the sourdough starter. And they laid eggs, had to chuck it, but thankfully, because I had saved some in the fridge, all I had to do was take a little bit of that discard, feed it, and I was good to go. I had a starter ready to go the next day. But the second day, you want to do the same thing again. After 12 hours or right before you go to bed, I like to feed my starter. I don't really time it. I just kind of do it right before bed because I know that I had fed it that morning around 10ish. So right before bed, I'll feed it again. And same process, discard half, 100 grams of water, 100 grams of flour all over again. And same thing, loosely cover and leave it overnight until the next morning. On day 2 and 3, I will feed my starter twice a day and, discard. But again, to not waste the discard, I put it in the fridge just to have a backup reservoir, so to speak. Now, day 3, what you did the night before, you're gonna do again. My starter today, I actually had to mix because it was super duper hungry. So that morning feed is gonna do it so much good. And you can tell just by how liquidy the starter was this morning that it was super hungry, and I had to kind of, again, mix it up a little bit. And you can see in the plastic container how it separates a little bit, and that's because it's hungry essentially, and you need to feed it. But I don't feed this discard in the plastic container because it goes in my fridge, and unless I'm gonna use it, I kind of just leave it in the back of the fridge, and that's where it lives. But again, same thing, discard half, 100 grams water, 100 grams of flour. I also forgot to mention that you want filtered water in your starter because chlorine will kill your starter, and tap water, especially if you have like city water, it obviously has chlorine in it. So you want filtered water. By day 4, I feel like my starter is ready to use if you want to go ahead and bake some bread, because it's usually ready. I know they say about a week, 5 to 7 days, but I find that if you feed yours correctly, by day 4, it's actually ready to go. Sometimes when it's cold, the starter will take a little bit longer. It'll take 5 to 7 days. But if you keep your house at room temperature, so to speak, if you keep your house at room temperature, your starter is ready to go at day 3 or 4, from my experience. But if you find that yours is not bubbling as much, then go ahead and keep feeding it twice a day until about day 5 or 6. And it's really not as complicated as I feel like they make it seem when you do your research. Clean water, flour, 1-to-1 ratio, and just patience. If you plan to bake frequently, you can keep your starter at room temperature. I keep mine on the counter on top of the fridge, depending on the temperature of the house again. And I just feed it once a day, maybe like 8 or so hours before I'm going to use it. And if you bake less often, you can keep yours in the fridge. That's what I do with my discard, and feed it once a week or right before you're going to use it. I like to let mine go to room temperature, and then I will feed it and let it sit for a few hours and then use it. That seems to work really well for us over here. Be patient, watch your starter. Honestly, just like anything, practice makes better, and the more you practice with your starter, the easier it gets over time. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.